Picture Earth after its greatest collapse, reset by the Permian-Triassic mass extinction. Forests are gone, soils are raw, and even the wind feels lonely across bare ground. Yet in the quiet a stubborn heartbeat remains, and the Triassic begins to improvise life. I'm your science guide today, a paleontology communicator, under a sun that feels ancient. Together we'll tour nature's laboratory between 250 and 200 million years ago. Reptiles, fishes, and the first modern forests audition for new roles in this vast reset. Recovery is not a light switch, but a braid of attempts across land and sea. In the earliest Triassic you would meet Ichthyosaurs, beaked and tusked, mowing floodplains. You would find cynodont burrows where our mammal-line cousins rode out harsh seasons. Rivers carried ash to shallow seas where ammonoids rebounded with spiraled shells. Corals and sponges tentatively patched reefs strand by strand in patient endurance. Above all, the stage was set by a supercontinent called Pangaea, fused pole to pole. Climate swung between scorching interiors and monsoon coasts, fueling environmental contrasts. That contrast became a crucible for evolutionary innovation across multiple lineages. By the Middle Triassic, sketches of life began to solidify into ecological blueprints. In the oceans, Ichthyosaurs evolved crescent tails and dinner plate eyes for dim light. Nothosaurs paddled through lagoons with long bodies and flexible necks for hunting. Placodonts developed pavement-like teeth for crushing clams and snails in the shallows. On land, the Archosaur clan pushed toward upright stances and efficient strides. It was a quiet revolution in how big bodies moved, breathed, and hunted. You can still read these trials in stone, preserved as bones, teeth, and footprints. Bones record stress and healing. Teeth preserve diets. Footprints archive split-second choices. To feel that moment, we travel to Monte San Giorgio on the Swiss-Italian border. This mountain's limestone is a time capsule of Middle Triassic seas in vivid detail. Fossils lie as if the tide just receded, preserved in lifelike postures and poses. Long-bodied Nothosaurs rest in graceful arcs alongside delicate fishes mid-turn. Center stage stands Tanystropheus, one of the strangest silhouettes nature attempted. Its neck alone could reach 3 meters, longer than body and tail combined. Each cervical vertebra was stretched like a telescope segment, stiff and deliberate. Scientists debated for decades if it stalked shores or floated like a periscope. Bone density and joint studies now point to a mostly aquatic lifestyle. Its heavy bones worked as ballast while it hunted in near-shore waters. Open its jaws and you see long, rake-like teeth for snagging fish and squid. In one species, the teeth vary along the jaw, hinting at split feeding strategies. Tanystropheus feels like a design sketch someone forgot to erase in evolution's notebook. But that is the Triassic mood. Test boldly, keep what works, discard the rest. The same spirit animated lesser-known lineages like the swift Huppasekians of China. They stiffened torsos with rib frames and propelled with rapid tail beats in shallow waters. Placodonts wore barrel bodies and ground shells. Later relatives like Henotus reshaped skulls. Henotus flattened its head into a shovel plate, a turtle-like design from another path. Even the plants joined the reset with remarkable resilience and persistence. Conifers claimed uplands, while ginkgos fanned along riverbanks and floodplains. Seed ferns persisted like green archives from earlier worlds, stabilizing raw soils. They invited insects and small vertebrates back into layered forest habitats. Meanwhile, the Archosaur story grew stranger and more consequential over time. Crocodile-line forms produced towering Rausuchians with pillar-like hind limbs. These apex hunters patrolled floodplains while armored Ectosaurs rooted in wetlands. Among bird-line relatives, light-footed forms experimented with speed and balance. Later, wings would appear as pterosaurs took to evening skies over Pangaea. Everywhere, metabolism, posture, and behavior co-evolved in response to shifting worlds. Some animals breathed deeper. Some walked straighter. Some traded sprawl for stride. Each change opened new food webs and ecological opportunities for survival. When I teach field crews, I call the Triassic a 10 million year brainstorming meeting. It was loud with evolutionary ideas and ruthless with follow-through in selection. Some experiments were dead ends, others seeded dynasties that would dominate later eras. Together they rebuilt the capacity for large, active animals to thrive again. They prepared the runway for dinosaurs, the stars of the next chapter in history. Before we meet them, hold this image of risk and possibility in your mind. Shorelines braided with lagoons, deserts pulsing with storms, and young forests rising. Every branch was an invitation, every niche a blank page for new life to claim. This prologue belongs to Triassic tinkerers forging speed, stamina, and new senses. When people ask me what a proto-dinosaur looks like, I say imagine a lean, two-legged runner. It has a long tail for balance, grasping hands, and a curious head more than bite force. It is not yet a giant, but it is rehearsing the moves for later success. Late Triassic landscapes offered room for these evolutionary experiments to unfold. River systems veined broad floodplains, and dune fields hummed in the persistent wind. Fern prairies erupted after fires, creating green carpets across the recovering land. In these settings, Archosaurs tested new hips and gaits for efficient movement. In Argentina's Ichthyosaurs basin, fossils of Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus mark an early chapter. They were swift, lightly built hunters with flexible forelimbs and agile bodies. Their design favored exploration and speed over armor and brute strength. North across Pangaea, other lineages experimented with alternative evolutionary scripts. Some pivoted toward beaks and leaf-shaped teeth for plant-eating strategies. These were the early blueprints of sauropodomorphs that would later stretch into giants. Others honed teeth and claws for the relentless pursuit of prey. One thread ties these bodies together: the ankle and hip architecture of ornithopterans. This dinosaur and pterosaur line encouraged a straight-legged stride and efficient breathing. It allowed animals to run longer and recover faster in a hot world. I remember holding the tiny tooth of a Triassic predator at Ghost Ranch. Here, Coelophysis skeletons lie by the dozens in fossil beds. The beds record droughts, followed by floods that piled bodies into channels. They form an archive of life pressed into place by sudden water. Coelophysis was not large, but it was elegant and built for endurance. It had a narrow head, long neck, and deep chest for efficient breathing. Its stride was tuned for economy and sustained movement over long distances. Trackways show groups moving together, pausing, turning, then flowing on like schools of fish. Students on our crew struggled with heat and the monotony of brushing grit from bone. Yet transformation came when a vertebra finally lifted free from the surrounding rock. The fossil was not just a thing. It was a solved problem in deep time. It was a handshake across millions of years between discoverer and discovered. Triassic communities were mosaics of varied forms and survival strategies. Nimble carnivores wove among armored etiosaurs and herdable early sauropodomorphs like Plateosaurus. Plateosaurus had strong hind limbs and grasping hands to rear up for feeding. It was a first draft of the long-necked feeding strategy perfected later. Elsewhere, crocodile-line Archosaurs explored their own extremes in body design. Some evolved heavy skulls and slicing teeth for predation in floodplains. Others developed armored backs and spiky shoulders for defense against attack. Power came from many directions in the Triassic, not only from speed. Even the oceans kept inventing new forms and strategies for survival. Ichthyosaurs diversified from dolphin-sized sprinters to deeper-bodied, long-distance cruisers. Some pushed toward tremendous sizes in open-water habitats. Marine food webs grew richer with squid analogs, bony fishes, and reef life. Amid this diversification, extinction pulses still came and went with force. Volcanic episodes shook climate and chemistry, altering seas and skies. Floods and droughts swung like pendulums, challenging every living thing. Only flexible lineages held their ground when conditions lurched abruptly. Flexibility was the quiet hero of the Triassic experiment in life. Being small, generalist, and quick to reproduce kept many lineages alive. That is a lesson for us as well in resilience and adaptation. Resilience usually begins with options and the ability to pivot quickly. Zoom in on bones again and new details come into focus. Early dinosaurs show hollowing that lightens skeletons for speed and agility. Muscle scars imply robust breathing pumps for sustained movement. Tail bases were packed with powerful tendons for propulsion and balance. Their brains, though not huge, were wired for movement and balance. Inner ear canals suggest sensitivity to head pitch and roll in motion. Such traits served hunters weaving through scrub or herds pivoting to safety. Meanwhile, their world kept changing with shifting monsoon belts along Pangaea. These shifts redrew the boundaries of deserts, forests, and wetlands. In one region seed ferns dominated, in another conifers held sway. Elsewhere, ginkgo groves shaded stream banks and river crossings. In our lab, we cast a coelophysis hand for an outreach program. A student named Mayo admitted she thought dinosaurs began as giants. She smiled when the tiny cast cured in her palm with delicate bones. She said, "So the secret was starting small and running smart." "Yes," I told her, "and not just running, but sensing and sociality too." Growth rate also played a part, with histology hinting at rapid development. Tooth wear and gut contents show diets from insect snapping to small vertebrate hunting. Plants shaped them as much as predators did through habitat and food supply. Forests layered shade and light patches, creating diverse microhabitats. Leaf chemistry influenced which herbivores could thrive in each zone. What plants do, animals echo, and in the Triassic the echoes grew louder. By the Norian stage, some sauropodomorphs were pushing toward true giant size. Necks lengthened, air sacs reduced weight, and limbs became columnar for support. Predators grew more capable in response to their prey's size. Across all these scenes, one refrain emerges: retool, reuse, recombine. The Triassic laboratory never wasted a good evolutionary idea. It traded traits between lineages, refined them with new bones and behaviors. It shared them with the sky, the sea, and the land alike. Hold that refrain as we step toward the end of the period story. The laboratory will soon be stress-tested by fire and climate change. The blueprints balancing speed, endurance, and flexibility will decide the survivors. They will choose who walks into the Jurassic and who remains in the rock. The Triassic's final exam arrived as fire from rifts in Pangaea. As the supercontinent began to split, lava flooded across newborn fractures. It laid vast basalt sheets and pumped carbon dioxide into the air. Geologists call this the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province in the rock record. The pulses likely came in bursts over hundreds of thousands of years. Around 201 million years ago, each burst forced climate to swing wildly. Oceans tipped toward acidification and low oxygen, stressing marine life. If you stood nearby, you would feel heat beneath your feet. You would see rivers flashing with steam from sudden volcanic heating. Far away, plants would falter and food webs would begin to thin. Many crocodile-line Archosaurs dropped out under the environmental whiplash. But not everything failed in this volatile evolutionary filter. Some crocodile cousins persisted along water margins to survive. Two lineages banked on light skeletons and efficient strides for survival. Dinosaurs on land and pterosaurs in the sky weathered upheaval better than most. Selection is not a judgment, it is a filter of traits. Movement, breathing, and growth through drought, heat, and flood pass through. After the smoke cleared, the Jurassic opened with new leadership in place. Sauropodomorphs crossed into true giants with long necks and columnar limbs. Theropods diversified from quick hunters into larger apex predator forms. Early ornithischians tightened beaks and guts for tougher plant diets. In the air, pterosaurs refined launch and landing for efficiency. Some developed head crests for display and flight control in the skies. Over reefs and lagoons, their shadows became part of daily weather. In the oceans, Ichthyosaurs and plesiosaur-line relatives took center stage. They rose into complex predator guilds across marine ecosystems. The Triassic's tentative communities became orchestras playing louder and longer. When students ask why dinosaurs succeeded, I point to Triassic lessons. It rewarded flexible lungs, strong cores, and energy-efficient gaits for survival. It punished rigidity and rewarded the capacity to pivot fast. I think of Maya in the lab sanding a fossil cast patiently. She arrived believing success meant brute size and overwhelming power. The Triassic taught her to look for pipelines of oxygen in bone, for feather-light skeletons and ankles built for long-distance travel. There is another lesson the Triassic offers across its fossil record. Innovation blooms where borders meet desert and forest, shore and sea. The more varied the stage, the more roles life can cast. More paths exist when trouble comes and ecosystems shift. Fossils are not frozen monsters, but datasets with faces and histories. Bones capture growth rates and healing injuries from ancient struggles. Teeth archive meals while trackways narrate decisions and movement. Add them up and you see an economy of energy with rules. Stand with me one last time on a Triassic shoreline at dusk. The light is low, insects buzz, and a small biped moves through reeds. It tilts its head, listening to the quiet sounds around it. A pterosaur lifts from a driftwood log into the copper sky. Offshore, something long-necked stirs the water and falls still again. None of these animals knows a new era about to open. They are simply living on the far side of catastrophe's shadow. They make do with what works and carry forward quiet competence. When the end Triassic extinction pulses pass, the ledger is changed forever. The laboratory delivers designs able to handle heat, distance, and scarcity. With those designs, the Jurassic can build cities of bone and air. As a communicator, I try to carry that Triassic spirit forward. In classrooms and field surveys, I remind people of big history's pattern. It is a story of modest beginnings compounded by feedback loops. Start small, run smart, share useful tricks, and keep space for new ideas. Remember Tanystropheus with its improbable fishing pole neck in the shallows. Remember Coelophysis threading through mudflats with companions. Remember the first sauropodomorphs stretching their necks for leaves in uplands. They were the makers of momentum in a recovering world. We are their beneficiaries in ways both subtle and profound. Mass extinctions are not only endings, but also openings for innovation. For the Triassic, the ending was a season of drafts and revisions. From those drafts rose the animals that filled the Jurassic with thunder. If you doubt the world's capacity to start over, hold a fossil. Feel the weight of a solved problem from deep time in your hand. It will tell you invention is a habit and resilience is a technique. Life keeps its tools sharp through every trial and reset. If you cannot hold a fossil, stand outside at dusk and breathe. Notice how your ribs move with each deep breath you take. That is an old trick from a hot world carried forward by ancestors. They traded posture for endurance and turned deserts into runways of life. The lab lights dim, but do not go dark at the close of the Triassic. Experiments continue into the Jurassic where giants rise on these foundations. The blueprint is not sacred, only useful, and will be modified again. Earth will set new challenges and life will keep answering with invention. When you hear the word Triassic, hear more than a slice of time. Hear a rehearsal, an engineering sprint, and a love letter to possibility. Know our own future benefits when we keep experimenting with care. Keep going.